You begin by noticing the simple fact that you are here, breathing, listening, resting inside the slow container of your body. Nothing needs to change. The air feels warm. As your breath moves in and out, you imagine turning inward, not sharply, not urgently, but the way you might turn toward a familiar window at dusk. Inside you, there is space. Inside you, there is land. You picture your body as a garden carried quietly beneath your skin. Not a dramatic garden. Not one with grand fountains or perfect rows. Just a living place, gently growing, gently resting, gently responding to light. Each cell becomes a small square of soil, dark and patient, holding tiny instructions the way earth holds seeds. These instructions do not shout. They do not rush. They wait. You have carried this garden since before you had words, since before memory, since before breath felt like breath. The garden knows how to grow without your supervision. It always has. A soft breeze moves through the imagined leaves. Somewhere, wind brushes branches together, making a sound like distant paper, aware but not demanding attention. In this garden, illness does not arrive as an enemy with sharp edges. It appears more like a plant growing where the sunlight does not quite reach. A vine leaning the wrong way. Roots tangled gently, not maliciously. Nothing here is broken. Some things are simply growing under complicated skies. You breathe in slowly, as if the air itself is curious. You breathe out longer, letting your shoulders fall into the ground beneath them. The garden holds history. Seeds passed down, generation after generation, each carrying small handwritten notes about how to build skin, how to fold proteins, how to listen for danger, how to rest. The notes are old. They are well loved. Sometimes the handwriting changes slightly, the way letters change over time. A loop grows wider. A line leans. The meaning usually remains. You smile faintly at the thought that your cells are reading instructions constantly, like very dedicated librarians who never take coffee breaks. They are extremely committed. Perhaps overly committed. As you walk deeper into the garden, the light softens. Everything glows the way it does just before night fully arrives. Gold becomes amber. Amber becomes blue. This is where the idea of CRISPR first appears, not as a machine, not as a blade, but as a pair of small, patient gardening shears resting on a wooden table. They are clean. They are quiet. No one is swinging them wildly. No one is in a hurry. CRISPR, you learn gently, is not about rewriting the entire garden. It is about noticing a single branch growing too close to another. It is about making space. The shears exist because the garden already exists. Because the instructions already exist. Because life has always been editing itself, softly, slowly, over long stretches of time. You sit with that thought. Editing does not mean erasing. Editing means listening closely. A moth drifts through the imagined air, bumping gently into nothing important, doing its best. You feel a small warmth in your chest. Your breath continues its steady rhythm, like waves touching shore without asking permission. In. Out. The science beneath all of this is real, but it does not demand equations tonight. It asks only for understanding shaped like curiosity. Cells carry instructions. Sometimes those instructions can be guided. CRISPR is one way humans have learned to participate in the garden rather than stand outside it. Not to dominate. Not to perfect. To tend. You feel reassured by that word. Tending. Tending implies care without force. It implies patience. It implies knowing when to stop. The garden responds to attention the way soil responds to rain. Slowly. Gratefully. You notice how calm your body feels when nothing is framed as a battle. Even illness softens when it is no longer treated like an invader. You breathe again, deeper this time, as if the air itself approves. Somewhere beneath the surface, seeds wait. They do not worry about the future. They simply hold what they carry. As the evening darkens, you lean closer to the soil, curious now about what those seeds are truly made of, about the quiet language written inside them, about how far back those messages travel. Your breath slows. The garden grows still. And your attention drifts gently downward, toward the written heart of life itself, where the next story waits, already patient, already calm. You remain in the garden, still and unhurried, noticing how the air feels thicker now, like night settling its weight gently on your shoulders. Your breath moves slowly. The garden listens with you. You lean closer to the soil, curious about what rests inside the seeds scattered everywhere beneath your feet. They look quiet, unremarkable. And yet, inside each one, there is writing. Not numbers. Not codes meant to intimidate. Just long, careful messages, folded again and again, passed forward with trust. You imagine each seed holding a small handwritten letter. The paper is soft from age. The ink has faded slightly, but the meaning remains clear enough. These letters are genes. They explain how to grow leaves, how to stretch roots downward, how to open when light arrives. They do not try to be perfect. They try to be useful. DNA becomes the long ribbon that holds all of these letters together, tied gently, looping back on itself, resting patiently inside every cell of the garden. It coils the way sleeping cats do, compact but ready. You feel comforted by how physical it all seems. Nothing abstract. Nothing distant. The garden does not demand that the letters remain unchanged forever. Over time, the handwriting shifts. A curve grows softer. A line leans a little to the left. These changes are not mistakes. They are edits made by time, by sunlight, by survival. They are what allow the garden to keep going. You smile again, quietly, at the idea that life keeps learning how to write itself, even without asking permission. Especially without asking permission. Your fingers brush the imagined seed envelopes. They feel dry and warm. Solid. Each one carries memory. Not memory like yours, filled with stories and faces, but memory shaped like instruction. Do this when cold comes. Try this when water is scarce. Rest when you can. The letters have traveled through countless gardens before reaching you. They have crossed oceans of time without ever knowing your name. And still, they arrive. You breathe in, slowly, as if smelling soil after rain. You breathe out, releasing the idea that everything must remain unchanged to be valuable. Sometimes the letters become harder to read. A word smudges. A sentence repeats. The meaning still mostly holds, but the garden may struggle in certain light. This is where illness quietly appears again, not as failure, but as miscommunication. A letter still arrives. It is simply read differently. You notice how gentle this framing feels. No blame. No urgency. The garden does not panic when instructions grow unclear. It adapts where it can. It rests where it must. Your breath stays slow, steady, rhythmic, like footsteps on soft ground. You think of how often humans crave certainty, while the garden thrives on flexibility. It feels like a lesson offered without words. Some gardeners, over time, have learned to read these letters more closely. They study the loops. They compare the margins. They notice patterns passed quietly from seed to seed. This curiosity does not interrupt the garden. It kneels beside it. You sense that something important is approaching, but it does not rush forward. It waits, like a thought that knows you will meet it eventually. The night deepens. The garden hums softly, the way living systems do when no one is watching. You rest with the idea that change has always been part of life's learning. Nothing here demands perfection. Only continuation. Your shoulders soften further. Your jaw releases. As you trace the imagined handwriting one last time, you notice faint marks along the edges of the letters, like tiny scars or annotations. They feel intentional. Protective. You wonder who added them. You wonder why. Somewhere far beneath your awareness, a much smaller garden is already answering that question, quietly preparing its story, patient and ancient, ready to be heard when you are ready to listen just a little closer, drifting now toward the smallest keepers of memory, where survival first learned how to remember. You follow the thought gently downward, past the seeds, past the letters, past the ribbon of DNA itself, drifting smaller than scale, smaller than sight, until the garden becomes a soft blur and something quieter takes its place. Your breath remains slow. The descent feels safe. Here, in this near-invisible space, life still hums. Not loudly. Not urgently. Just enough to remind you that even the smallest things prefer to continue existing. You imagine bacteria, tiny and ancient, floating through warm currents like dust motes in late afternoon light. They have no eyes. No plans. And yet, they are not helpless. These lives are simple, but not foolish. They have learned, over long stretches of time, that survival favors memory. Not memory like stories. Memory like marks left behind. When danger appears, something sharp and unfamiliar, these bacteria do not panic. They respond the way the garden always does. They notice. A fragment of the thread is saved, not out of fear, but out of usefulness. A clipping pressed between pages. A reminder. This is where CRISPR begins, long before humans give it a name. It begins as a scrapbook. A quiet archive. Each bacterial cell keeps small pieces of past dangers tucked into its own genetic margins. Not to dwell. To recognize. If the danger returns, the memory wakes gently. The cell responds quickly, precisely, without drama. The response is calm because it has been practiced. You feel soothed by this idea. Protection does not have to be loud. Defense does not require aggression. The space around you hums softly, like distant electrical lines heard through sleep. It is not distracting. It is grounding. These bacteria are not trying to be clever. They are simply trying to last. And in doing so, they invent something remarkable without realizing it. CRISPR is not born from ambition. It grows out of necessity, shaped by repetition and time. The same way roots learn where water tends to gather. You smile faintly at the thought that one of the most precise tools humans have ever touched begins as a microbial habit. Life teaching itself tricks and never bothering to patent them. Your breath continues. In. Out. The bacteria do not know they are teaching anyone. They do not know they are ancient professors drifting through fluid worlds. They simply exist. When humans finally notice this system, much later, it feels less like invention and more like eavesdropping. A quiet moment of overhearing nature thinking out loud. Scientists watch. They listen. They learn not to interrupt. What they see is elegant. A way to recognize specific genetic sequences. A way to cut only what is familiar and unwanted. A way to leave everything else untouched. You notice how carefully this mirrors the garden metaphor. Pruning without rage. Editing without erasure. The comfort deepens. Nothing about this discovery feels violent. It feels borrowed. Borrowed knowledge always carries responsibility. You sense that, even here, drifting among imagined cells. The bacteria do not use CRISPR to redesign themselves. They use it to survive another moment. Another gentle continuation. The hum softens. Your body sinks further into rest. You feel small here, but not insignificant. Small in the way stars are small when you lie beneath them. Present. Healing tools, you realize, often come from life simply trying to stay alive. Not from conquest. From persistence. Your shoulders release again. Your jaw loosens. As you prepare to drift back upward, toward the larger garden, you carry this idea with you. That memory can be protective. That precision can be peaceful. Somewhere above, humans are still learning how to hold this borrowed wisdom without squeezing too tightly. Still learning how to use shears that do not rush. The night continues to deepen. The hum fades into silence. You feel curiosity stirring again, slow and warm, about what happens next, about what changes when this ancient bacterial habit meets the human desire to heal, and how carefully those two instincts must be introduced to one another, like unfamiliar plants sharing soil, as your breath drifts onward, opening the space for the next quiet thought to arrive. You drift back upward from the microscopic hush, rising gently until the familiar garden takes shape again around you. Your breath stays slow. The air feels warm, steady, forgiving. Nothing has changed while you were gone. The soil still waits. The leaves still breathe. At the center of the garden, you notice the shears again, resting quietly on their wooden surface, untouched, unhurried, patient enough to wait forever if needed. They do not gleam. They do not call for attention. These are not the kind of tools that demand action. They invite consideration. You sit beside them, knees touching earth, feeling the ground cool beneath your palms. The garden does not expect you to do anything. It simply allows you to understand. CRISPR, you learn here, is less about cutting and more about choosing when not to cut. The precision matters not because it is powerful, but because it is limited. It knows exactly where to touch. Inside the body's garden, every instruction rests within a sentence written in living ink. Most sentences remain untouched. They are already doing their quiet work. Sometimes, though, a single word repeats when it should not. A phrase lingers too long. A pause disappears. The shears exist for moments like these. Not to rewrite the entire page. Just to remove a fragment that prevents the sentence from breathing properly. You find comfort in how restrained this feels. No sweeping gestures. No dramatic revisions. The science behind it remains gentle tonight. CRISPR recognizes a specific sequence, the way your eyes recognize a familiar path home in low light. It does not wander. It does not guess. Guided by memory borrowed from bacteria, the shears move only where they are invited. They snip. Then they stop. What happens next feels almost tender. The cell, noticing the change, responds the way living systems always do. It repairs. It fills the space. Not perfectly. Naturally. You smile at the idea that even at the smallest scales, life dislikes emptiness. It prefers continuity. It prefers flow. The shears are never used alone. They are part of a conversation. Between instruction and response. You imagine a gardener who pauses often, stepping back, observing how the plant reacts before touching anything else. CRISPR demands that same humility. Your breath matches the rhythm of that imagined gardener. In. Out. Precision, you realize, is not about control. It is about respect. The garden does not welcome force. It responds to attention. There is a quiet humor in this, something softly human. After centuries of blunt tools, humans finally learn that gentleness works better. The plants, if they could speak, might raise an eyebrow and say, "Finally." You feel a faint smile pass through you, brief and warm. CRISPR does not promise perfection. It promises possibility. A chance for a struggling instruction to find its footing again. The shears remain light in the hand because they are not meant to work for long stretches. They intervene. Then they leave. This restraint matters. It is what keeps tending from becoming harm. You notice how this mirrors the way your own body prefers care. Small adjustments. Rest. Time. Nothing about healing here feels rushed. Even when hope appears, it walks instead of running. The evening light shifts again, deepening toward blue. The garden grows quieter. CRISPR, resting now as an idea rather than a tool, feels less intimidating than it once did. It feels like listening made visible. Listening to the cell. Listening to the sentence. Listening to what should remain untouched. You breathe again, slower still, feeling the ground support you without comment. Somewhere in the garden, a branch stirs, relieved by a little extra space. Elsewhere, everything continues as it always has. Precision coexists with tenderness here. They do not compete. They depend on one another. As you rise from the soil, brushing earth from your hands, you begin to imagine specific plants within the garden, ones that struggle more than others, ones that might benefit from such careful tending, and the thought unfolds slowly, gently, like a path opening just beyond the edge of light, waiting for you to follow when you are ready, breathing softly as the night carries you forward. You remain in the garden as night settles more fully, the air cooler now, the light softened into something forgiving and blue. Your breath moves easily. Nothing pulls at you. As your eyes wander slowly across the garden, you notice one plant that seems quieter than the rest. It grows, but not easily. Its leaves angle sideways, searching. You kneel beside it without judgment, feeling the soil beneath your hands, cool and slightly damp. The plant is not failing. It is adapting. Its roots twist and cross beneath the surface, not because they are broken, but because the path downward has been complicated. Rocks. Shadows. Old turns taken long ago. This is how genetic illness appears in the garden. Not as something hostile, as something shaped by circumstance. Some instructions carried by seeds lead to growth that struggles under certain light. Not everywhere. Not always. Just here. You breathe in slowly, letting that understanding settle. You breathe out, releasing the instinct to fix. CRISPR returns quietly at the edge of your awareness, not as a solution, but as a form of support. A way to help roots untangle. A way to adjust the soil without uprooting the plant. In the body, some cells carry instructions that make their work harder than it needs to be. Blood cells that tire too quickly. Proteins that fold with difficulty. The garden does not respond by erasing the plant. It responds by asking what the plant needs. You notice how different this feels from the language of battle so often used to describe illness. There is no fight here. Only care. The shears may be used sparingly, not to reshape the plant entirely, but to remove a small obstruction. A single crossing root. A sentence that repeats when it should pause. After that, the plant continues on its own. Growing in its own way. At its own pace. You find comfort in this restraint. Support does not mean replacement. Guidance does not mean control. A faint warmth spreads through your chest, the kind that arrives when something finally makes sense without effort. The garden teaches that healing unfolds over time, not in moments of sudden change. Growth prefers seasons. Rest prefers nights. You sit with the plant, noticing how it responds slowly to your presence, leaves lifting almost imperceptibly. Or maybe that is just your imagination. Either way, it feels kind. Your breath remains steady. In. Out. CRISPR therapies, you understand now, are not about designing perfect gardens. They are about helping specific plants grow more comfortably in the soil they already occupy. Some conditions are inherited like weather patterns. They arrive without choice. They shape growth quietly. The garden does not assign blame to clouds. It adjusts. You smile faintly at the thought that even science, at its most advanced, often comes down to listening carefully and interfering as little as possible. The plants probably appreciate that. Night deepens. A distant hum settles into the background, steady and unintrusive. You rest with the idea that support can be subtle and still meaningful. That helping does not require rewriting everything that came before. The plant beside you remains itself. It simply has more room now. As you rise slowly, brushing soil from your knees, you carry this understanding with you. Healing is not a single moment. It is a process that unfolds gently, with pauses, with patience. Your breath slows further, matching the rhythm of the garden at rest. Somewhere nearby, other plants continue growing in ways unseen, supported by small adjustments made long before you noticed them. You sense that this tending will continue, guided by careful hands that know when to touch and when to wait, and as the garden grows quiet around you, your thoughts drift naturally toward the deeper questions of how those hands learn where to reach and where to remain still, opening softly into the next stretch of night. You stay close to the ground now, knees resting in the soil, palms open, breathing slowly as the garden settles into a deeper quiet. The night feels steady. Nothing presses forward. This is the part of tending that rarely gets attention. The pause. You notice how tempting it would be to reach out immediately, to adjust, to prune, to improve. Hands like to feel useful. Minds like closure. But the garden teaches something else first. It teaches waiting. CRISPR, in this stillness, is no longer just a tool. It becomes a question. Where should care touch, and where should it not? You feel the weight of that question sink into the soil with you. It is heavier than the shears themselves. Inside the body's garden, not every tangled root is meant to be straightened. Some twists provide strength. Some detours protect against storms not yet imagined. You breathe in, slowly, feeling the air cool your throat. You breathe out, longer, releasing the urge to decide too quickly. Scientists learn this lesson the same way gardeners do. By observing. By watching what happens when nothing is changed. They learn to map the soil before touching it. To understand which instructions matter deeply and which are flexible. To notice how one adjustment ripples outward. Nothing here is rushed. Rushing breaks things. You sense how much humility this requires. To know that even with powerful tools, understanding must come first. The garden hums faintly, a low sound beneath thought, reminding you that life continues even when no one interferes. CRISPR works best when paired with restraint. It needs context. It needs patience. A small smile crosses your mind at the idea that the most advanced science often circles back to very old wisdom. Measure twice. Cut once. And sometimes, do not cut at all. You feel grounded by that permission. Uncertainty no longer feels like failure here. It feels like respect. Not knowing everything becomes a form of care. A way of keeping the soil intact until the right season arrives. Your breath stays slow, almost sleepy now, the way it does when the body trusts that nothing sudden will happen. In the garden, learning where to touch the soil means learning where not to press. Roots need space. So do questions. You imagine scientists kneeling just like this, listening to data the way you listen to wind and leaves. Patterns emerge only when the noise settles. The night air cools slightly. You pull the idea of warmth closer around you. CRISPR does not decide alone. It is guided by layers of understanding, by careful testing, by the willingness to stop when answers remain incomplete. This, too, is part of healing. You notice how this mirrors the way emotional care works in your own life. Sometimes support means staying present without intervening. Sometimes the kindest response is silence. The garden seems to agree. It grows quietly in the dark, doing most of its work unseen. You let your shoulders drop another inch. You let your jaw loosen. There is a gentle humor in realizing that humans, after all their cleverness, must still learn when to leave things alone. The plants have always known. You sit with that thought, feeling no pressure to resolve it. Learning where to touch the soil is an ongoing practice. It changes with context. It deepens with time. Tonight, it is enough to know that care does not require certainty. It requires attention. The garden breathes with you now, slow and even. As you prepare to rise, you notice stars beginning to appear above the leaves, questions suspended in darkness, bright and distant. You do not reach for answers yet. You simply notice them. The night deepens. The soil remains cool beneath your hands. And as you move gently onward, carrying the quiet understanding that restraint is part of responsibility, your thoughts lift naturally toward the wider questions waiting above, ethical and human and shared, rising slowly like constellations, inviting reflection without urgency, as your breath drifts calmly into the next chapter of night. You lift your gaze from the soil and notice how the garden looks under moonlight, softer now, edges blurred, shadows generous rather than threatening. Your breath remains slow. Your body feels supported. This is where choice lives. Not loud. Not sharp. It settles like dew, quietly adding weight to every leaf. You sense that tending the garden is no longer only about knowing how to touch the soil, but about deciding whether to touch it at all. The question feels heavier than the shears ever did. Here, ethics does not arrive as a rulebook. It arrives as a pause. You walk slowly beneath the branches, noticing how some grow wild and others have been guided just enough to keep paths open. Neither feels wrong. Both belong. In the body's garden, this question appears as a gentle boundary. Where does care end and redesign begin? Where does healing rest, and where does desire quietly step forward? You breathe in, steady and calm. You breathe out, allowing uncertainty to remain. CRISPR, in this light, feels less like a solution and more like a responsibility passed carefully from hand to hand. It can ease suffering. It can also tempt perfection. The garden does not rush you toward an answer. It knows that rushed choices leave scars. You feel the quiet weight of consent here. Each plant has its own way of growing. Each deserves respect. Some branches bend naturally toward light. Others twist in ways that seem inefficient but prove resilient during storms. You sense how easily preference could be mistaken for improvement. The garden resists that confusion. Ethical care, you realize, means asking not only what can be changed, but what should remain untouched. It means listening for silence as much as instruction. Your breath deepens slightly, like a tide settling into a familiar rhythm. There is a softness to this responsibility that surprises you. Choice does not demand urgency. It asks for humility. You smile faintly at the idea that humans often fear ethics because they expect it to be rigid, when in truth it is shaped by empathy. The plants, if consulted, would likely agree. The moonlight shifts. Leaves glow silver, then fade. In this quiet, you understand that healing guided by compassion will always move more slowly than healing driven by impatience. And that slowness is protective. You notice how good it feels not to be asked for certainty tonight. To be allowed to sit with questions that do not need answers before morning. CRISPR does not make these choices alone. People do. Communities do. The garden widens in your imagination, stretching beyond your own body, beyond your own concerns, into shared soil where decisions ripple outward. You feel the gentle seriousness of that truth. Not heavy, just present. Care grows best when guided by compassion, not perfection. You repeat the thought quietly, letting it settle. Somewhere, a branch creaks softly in the night, adjusting itself without help. You let it be. Your shoulders drop again. Your jaw loosens. The garden does not ask you to solve everything. It asks you to notice. Choice, you learn here, is not about control. It is about stewardship. You imagine hands passing the shears along, each pausing before accepting them, each aware that doing nothing is sometimes the most respectful action. There is gentle humor in realizing that wisdom often looks like restraint. So much effort, simply to not interfere. You exhale slowly, amused and soothed at once. The ethical questions do not feel threatening anymore. They feel like companions walking beside you, content with silence. Moonlight continues its quiet work. The garden rests within it. As your attention turns inward again, you feel the shift from philosophy back toward the body itself, toward lived experience rather than abstract thought. Your breath steadies. Your awareness narrows. The garden grows quieter, holding its questions without tension, and you sense yourself drifting gently away from reflection and back toward sensation, toward the slow realities of growth and healing that unfold across time, as the night carries you onward, softly opening the path into the next season of understanding, unhurried, unresolved, and calm. You remain in the garden, but time behaves differently now, loosening its grip, stretching wide like a long, gentle evening that refuses to end abruptly. Your breath moves easily. Nothing feels urgent. The moon hangs a little lower, and you sense that the garden is no longer focused on individual plants or single decisions, but on something broader. Cycles. You notice how the soil holds memories of many seasons at once. Warmth from past summers. Coolness from forgotten nights. All of it layered, all of it present. Healing, the garden suggests, does not arrive in a single moment. It unfolds the way seasons do. CRISPR therapies, when you think of them now, feel less like solutions and more like early spring experiments. Careful plantings. Tentative adjustments. Nothing here pretends to be finished. Some changes take root quickly. Others wait beneath the surface, invisible, gathering strength in their own time. You breathe in slowly, feeling how comfortable it is to release the expectation of immediacy. You breathe out, longer still, letting patience settle into your body. The garden never expects overnight transformation. It measures progress in growth, not speed. You imagine years passing softly, like clouds drifting across the moon without disturbing it. Each season adds something subtle. A deeper root. A sturdier stem. CRISPR works within this rhythm, not outside it. It does not force blossoms out of season. It supports conditions that allow healthier growth later. You feel reassured by this framing. Healing that respects time feels safer. The plants around you seem unbothered by waiting. They know that rushing leads to brittle growth. There is gentle humor in realizing that humans often want results faster than leaves can grow. The garden responds with quiet amusement. You smile faintly, then relax again. In the body, changes introduced through careful tending take time to reveal themselves. Cells adjust. Systems respond. Balance shifts gradually. Nothing announces itself loudly. The night air cools slightly, then steadies. You feel comfortably warm, supported by the ground beneath you. Healing across generations becomes easier to imagine now. Small adjustments passed forward. Lessons carried quietly. The garden does not mind that some work remains unfinished. Unfinished does not mean unsuccessful. You notice how freeing this idea feels. Progress does not need to hurry to be real. Your breath deepens, settling into a rhythm that feels ancient and reliable. CRISPR therapies remain works in progress, guided by care, shaped by learning, refined through patience. This does not weaken them. It grounds them. The garden trusts slow improvement more than dramatic change. You sit with that trust, letting it soak into you the way moisture sinks into soil overnight. Some plants around you show signs of past tending. A scar where a branch was once guided. A stronger line of growth where space was made. They are not perfect. They are alive. You realize that healing often looks like living more comfortably with what remains, rather than erasing every trace of struggle. This thought feels kind. The night continues without expectation. Crickets sound somewhere distant, steady and unconcerned. You feel your shoulders relax further. Your face softens. Season after season, the garden adapts. So do bodies. So does understanding. CRISPR is part of this ongoing conversation, not its conclusion. A chapter, not the ending. You rest with the knowledge that care unfolds over years, sometimes longer, shaped by observation and adjustment. There is no finish line here. Only continuation. The idea feels calming rather than disappointing. Endings require urgency. Continuations allow rest. You breathe again, slow and even. As the garden settles into its nighttime rhythm, your thoughts widen gently beyond individual plants and individual seasons, toward shared soil and shared responsibility, toward questions of how care is distributed and who feels its benefits first, and this widening happens naturally, without effort, as if the night itself is guiding your attention outward, opening the quiet path into the next chapter, where water flows slowly between roots, and the garden waits patiently to be considered once more. You stay in the widened garden, aware now that its borders stretch far beyond what you can see, beyond what you can hold alone. Your breath remains slow. The night feels spacious. Somewhere nearby, water moves. Not rushing. Not scarce. You hear it traveling beneath the soil, slipping between roots, pooling briefly, then continuing onward, guided by gravity and patience rather than preference. This is where the question appears. Not sharply, softly. Who receives the water first? In a shared garden, water does not belong to one plant alone. It moves through common ground, shaped by channels dug long before any single root arrived. You kneel again, placing your hand on the earth, feeling how cool it is where moisture lingers. The soil remembers every rain. Care, you realize, is never only individual. It is distributed. CRISPR, once imagined as a tool for tending a single struggling plant, now feels connected to wider systems of access and attention. Who can reach the water? Who waits longer? The garden does not answer quickly. It invites observation. Some roots grow close to the surface, easily touched by passing streams. Others dig deep, learning patience through necessity. Neither strategy is wrong, but both feel the consequences of how water is shared. You breathe in slowly, as if drawing in coolness from the ground itself. You breathe out, releasing the need for simple answers. In the human world, care flows through channels shaped by history, resources, and choices made far upstream. The garden reflects this without commentary. You notice how fairness here does not demand identical outcomes. It asks for awareness. To tend responsibly means noticing where soil cracks from dryness while nearby ground remains damp. It means asking why. There is no accusation in the question, only curiosity. The water continues moving quietly, indifferent to status, responding only to paths made available to it. You feel the weight of shared responsibility settle gently in your chest. Not heavy. Grounded. CRISPR Therapies, you sense, carry this same quiet question. How are they offered? Who was invited into the garden? The thought does not disturb your calm. It deepens it. Care grows stronger when shared, the garden seems to say, not through competition, but through coordination. You imagine gardeners working together, adjusting channels, ensuring that water reaches farther corners without draining the source. No one shouts. No one rushes. There is gentle humor in realizing that even water prefers cooperation. Left alone, it simply finds the easiest path. Guidance helps it do better. You smile faintly, then settle again. The night air carries a steady hum, distant and comforting, like a city heard from far away, reminding you that many lives continue beyond your awareness. Equity here is not framed as a demand. It is framed as tending. To notice imbalance is the first act of care. To respond thoughtfully is the next. The garden does not pretend this is simple. It does not pretend it is solved. It allows complexity to exist without panic. Your breath remains slow and even. Your body feels supported by the ground. Some plants receive water sooner than others. Some need more. Some less. The goal is not sameness. It is nourishment. You rest with that distinction, letting it soften your thoughts. CRISPR, once again, feels like part of a larger system rather than a standalone answer. It can help. It can also reveal gaps. Both matter. The water moves on, seeping into deeper layers of soil, reaching roots that have waited quietly, teaching patience without resentment. You feel something settle inside you. A sense that care is strongest when it accounts for more than one body. The garden grows quieter again, the sound of water fading into background memory. Your shoulders relax further. Your jaw loosens. Shared silence returns. As you rise slowly from the ground, brushing soil from your hands, your awareness turns inward once more, returning from the collective back toward the personal, toward the way these questions of care and access shape individual paths forward, and you sense the garden narrowing gently, guiding you toward quieter ground, toward future paths still forming, unfinished and open, as your breath drifts softly onward into the next stretch of night, where possibilities wait without demand. You rise from the soil after kneeling beside roots and shared water, feeling your hands warm from the earth and your breath steady in the cool night air. The garden stretches beyond what you can see. Shadows deepen, but nothing feels hidden. The path before you is soft, unfinished. It winds gently between tall grasses and flowering plants whose seeds you cannot name. Some leaves rustle in a breeze you cannot see, a whisper that carries possibilities rather than answers. You notice how easy it would be to wish for certainty. To see the path and know exactly where it ends. But here, uncertainty is not frightening. It is generous. The shears you imagined earlier rest again in your awareness. CRISPR feels more like a soft light moving along the path than a tool in your hand. It illuminates possibilities. It does not force direction. You walk slowly, letting each step press gently into the softened soil. The plants lean slightly toward the path, as if curious. You smile at the thought that growth itself might be as interested in tomorrow as you are. Some branches stretch overhead, the tips brushing your shoulders, reminding you that the garden continues whether you move or not. Care and curiosity coexist quietly. Your breath matches the rhythm of the path. In. Out. The future feels like this path, partially visible, partially imagined. CRISPR is not destiny. It is a direction, illuminated softly, hinting at what could be explored next. The night deepens further. Stars appear overhead, small pinpricks of guidance rather than maps. You notice how easy it is to feel small here, but in a way that feels comforting, not diminishing. The garden does not need you to plan everything. It only asks that you notice. Some areas remain untouched. Some areas invite care. You do not need to rush to decide. You imagine the seeds that will grow tomorrow. They will carry messages quietly, gently, shaped by what has already happened and by the care given today. The path curves gently around a shadowed bend, and you cannot see what lies beyond. You do not need to. CRISPR, like a distant light, shines faintly, suggesting one of many possibilities, without forcing a single outcome. You feel a quiet trust in that. Your shoulders soften. Your jaw loosens. The air smells faintly of damp soil and night-blooming flowers. A distant cricket hums steadily, keeping time with your breath. You notice how the garden has prepared you to imagine without urgency, to consider without claiming control, to hope without expectation. Even as you stand, you feel the path beneath your feet gently shifting with the seasons of the garden. Some steps will be easier than others. Some steps will require waiting. And that is acceptable. You inhale slowly, drawing in the cool night. You exhale, letting the soft darkness settle around your shoulders. CRISPR is a tool, a light, a possibility, but the future itself remains unfinished, waiting for quiet attention and gentle care. The night deepens further still, and the path curves beyond your sight, inviting reflection and curiosity, without demand. You take another slow step. And another. Your breath drifts softly along the soil, carrying you forward, carrying you toward unseen paths, toward gardens that will grow under careful hands, toward the next quiet chapter of thought and rest, as the night continues to fold gently around you. You reach the gate of the garden at last, a low wooden arch resting among soft grasses and shaded by gentle trees. The air feels warmer here, carrying the faint scent of soil and night-blooming flowers. Your breath slows further. Each inhale draws in quiet calm. Each exhale lets go of lingering effort. The garden behind you continues its work. Leaves stretch. Roots twist gently. Water flows beneath the surface. You realize that your presence is not required for life to continue. The plants do not ask. They do not depend on your intervention. They simply exist. CRISPR, the shears, the letters and seeds, the whispers of bacterial memory, they all remain part of the garden story. Yet here, they fade softly into the larger narrative. They are neither urgent nor demanding. They are threads woven through the quiet tapestry of care, patience, and curiosity. You sit on the ground beside the gate, feeling the cool earth beneath your hands and the gentle rise and fall of your own chest. You notice how safe it feels to simply observe. To watch the garden without needing to prune, to guide, or to alter. The night is still. A faint hum drifts in from somewhere distant, steady and unintrusive. Crickets chirp softly. A breeze brushes your face. The garden does not mind your absence of action. It has never required it. It thrives quietly, rhythmically, persistently. You smile faintly at the thought that care does not always need doing. It sometimes needs being. Being present. Being patient. Your body releases tension you didn't know it held. Your shoulders drop. Your jaw softens. Your hands rest loosely on your knees. CRISPR is here, as a whisper. A reminder of careful attention, of possibilities held lightly. It does not insist. It does not demand. The garden teaches the same lesson, that trust allows growth. That allowing things to unfold without interference can be as meaningful as any deliberate act. Your eyes drift to the leaves swaying faintly in the night breeze. They move with rhythm, not effort. They do not ask for your help. They continue, just as you continue. Sleep approaches not as surrender, but as quiet participation in the garden's ongoing work. Rest is not absence. It is trust. You inhale fully, feeling the cool night air expand your chest. You exhale slowly, letting the warmth of the soil and the calm of the garden fill you completely. There is gentle humor here, almost invisible, in the thought that humans sometimes need permission to rest, while the garden has never stopped resting or growing in its own quiet rhythm. You notice how comforting it feels to release responsibility. The shears remain in your mind as a soft metaphor. Not for action, but for the potential to act when necessary. Tonight, it is enough to simply exist beside the gate. To breathe. To feel. To trust that the garden, like your body, like the world, continues its work without alarm. The stars above shine without expectation. The moon casts a soft glow across the arch and grasses. You close your eyes for a moment, allowing the calm to settle. Your breath becomes the tide, gentle and even. CRISPR, the seeds, the water, the twisting roots all return to their patient rhythm, held in quiet balance. You do not need to follow every path. You do not need to read every letter. One last slow breath in and out. The garden rests. So do you. The night continues, steady and unhurried, holding all things in its gentle, patient rhythm as you drift fully into calm and sleep.